Salutations and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kidology and I make videos about everything and anything to do with modern society. So today we're going to have another parasocial therapy session because I need it and I'm hoping that you do too. Yes, you. And I thought, based on some of the comments I got from our last session, I would talk about popularity because it seemed that this really hit something with some of my viewers. And it's interesting because popularity is probably the one thing that in my life has really affected me quite profoundly and intuitively. And I think that's because I've had the opportunity of being on both sides of the spectrum very suddenly and very unexpectedly. It was as if overnight I went from being the most popular girl at an all-girls school of over 1,000 students to being nobody. And by nobody, I literally mean somebody with no friends who ate her lunch outside the girls' bathroom by a window alone every single day and got locked in school at least once a month because I would be there just studying alone. And it was a very bittersweet situation to be in because I realized that I wouldn't be where I am today without it. And even though I can't exactly say that I enjoyed my time at Oxbridge, it was definitely incredible having that kind of access to the things which I loved, the information which I loved, the books, the knowledge, the resources, the academics, just the very intellectual culture which I came to value and love and cherish even to this day. So it's a love-hate relationship with this concept of popularity insofar as it relates to me personally. And so I thought we'd talk about it insofar as, well, just looking at it in terms of my own experience, but also just as a general thing. Why we crave popularity, or why we absolutely loathe those who are popular, or I guess why we don't even care about it at all. But I haven't yet really met somebody who doesn't care about it beyond the mere I don't care about popularity, which is sort of what we all like to say, but let's be real. But just before we get into that, I would like to give a huge thank you to today's video sponsor, Wren. Wren is a public benefit corporation which helps you to offset your carbon footprint through a monthly subscription. Wren is perhaps the best example of what a modern corporation ought to be in the age of climate change. And it does it through absolute transparency, a kind of transparency that I have not seen with any other corporation before. All you have to do is answer a few questions on Wren's website, determining how much carbon you put out into your local environment. Wren then uses this information and your subscription to offset your carbon footprint via funding approved and highly scrutinized programs and initiatives. Not only do you receive monthly updates from Wren's Climate Fund, but transparency ensures that you know precisely where your money is going. And this is all ensured via Wren's legally binding charter, which you can access on its website as well. So with my special link, go over to Wren and do something for the environment and the planet at large. And the first 100 people to sign up using my link will have 10 trees planted in their name. Yes, they will indeed. Thank you so very much to Wren for sponsoring this video. It has, as always, been an absolute pleasure working with you. So I'd like to start off with just exploring what is the feeling of being popular. If somebody were to ask me that question, I think my response would be something as follows. It's like having a chessboard and knowing from the start that you've won because the rules are yours for the making. It's elating. It's so injected with purpose and direction that the idea of you not being on top is not only nonsensical to you, but even more so to everybody else. And let me give an example of this. I went to high school in South Africa, for those of you who don't know. I was at boarding school. I was on a sports scholarship, basically, so I didn't pay anything. But it was a good school. It wasn't a private school, but it was a very good school. And it attracted students from Black, and white families, and so it was very mixed in that sense, which was quite rare in South Africa. And in terms of what I said about the feeling of being popular, an example which immediately comes to mind is when my high school hosted its first beauty pageant. Knowing what a beauty pageant is, you sort of know the criteria of it, even though I in absolutely no way was anything associated with beauty, especially relative to the other students at my school and in my grade. I was still when every grade had to vote for and choose their representative or their candidate for the beauty pageant chosen. I was voted as the representative, and I think it didn't even come as a surprise to me. I knew that I would be the one representing my grade because I was the most popular, and it seemed obvious to me. It didn't even hit me that anybody else could possibly win. Not that it was even a competition, because I didn't even see it as a competition, because it was what it was going to be, and that is what happened. I think that is definitely something that I really took for granted in the moment. And it's interesting because I look at popularity at my South African high school relative to ideas of popularity that are quite popular in the media, and also the idea of popularity as I saw it playing out when I unexpectedly and suddenly moved to the United Kingdom. And in South Africa, popularity, at least in my high school, was based on one thing, and that was respect. And respect was gained through achievement, and the best way to measure achievement was through academic achievement or sporting achievement. And this was something that schools really recognized. You would wear blazers with badges showing all your honors, all your achievements. There'd be announcements in assemblies. School was a place in which you were rewarded for coming first in your grade, for being in the clever classes. You were treated differently. You were treated with respect. If you did exceptionally well in sport and were part of sporting teams, you were deemed a success, you were deemed something special, and that's how you gained respect from your peers, and just as importantly from teachers. I think it's very odd, this idea, which I've found at least living in a Western country, that sort of teachers and students are very segregated and separate. Whereas in my high school, teachers and students had an incredibly close relationship. They were almost like, I wouldn't say friends, but I think because respect was so important in our own friendships with each other, but inevitably with teachers, it was sort of a relationship that was a very positive and good one. And it was one in which if you were a teacher's pet, it wasn't a bad thing. People were actually in awe of you being a teacher's pet, and it was something to aspire toward. And well, I was definitely a teacher's pet. I mean, when I went to high school in South Africa, I would go up to my teachers and hug them. I'd spend my lunch breaks with them in their classroom or on duty, talking to them about different things going on in the school and all this sort of thing. Hugging my teacher was just what happened. If I was crying and was sad about something, I would go to my favorite teacher and we would talk, and I would hug her, and you know, she was like a parental figure to me. And in the UK, it's illegal for teachers to even so much as pat you on the head. And this just shocked me incredibly. I'm not sure what to think about this now, because I definitely appreciate the importance of boundaries and how people have boundaries. And that was not something that I'd ever been taught back in South Africa. I didn't know that there were boundaries. My space wasn't my space, and it wasn't space that I was allowed to define. But that's definitely how different the criteria of popularity was in South Africa. Your looks and how how you looked didn't matter, which was very, very strange because I think about it now, and the people who were stereotypically and conventionally beautiful and attractive and would have boyfriends and go out were not looked down upon, but they weren't popular because people didn't respect them. People didn't aspire to be them. The aspiration was to be in the top class, in the top sporting team. That's what was important. And I definitely loved being popular. It differed to what I was in primary school, maybe for another video, but I think it was different primarily because of the fact that I'm black, but if you can't tell, I don't necessarily fit into the mold of being black South African or black in any sense of the word, really. You can watch some of my other videos, I guess, and that actually worked for me very well in high school because my high school was a boarding school, first and foremost, and so there wasn't that outside influence. On weekends, we'd stay in the boarding school, we didn't leave the school, and so we had to navigate the world on our own terms, really. I sort of was able to unite black and white students because I had a foot in both camps. I was black insofar as I looked black, but I was white insofar as I talked white. And so if ever there was a problem, I was sort of the person, and I liked that role. And I think I had some of my proudest moments being popular. It sounds so shallow. I think because popularity, at least in my high school, was such a different thing, it meant a different thing. And I think the proudest moment of my life, of which there are very, very few, my life is just a life of regret, to be fair. I think I'm proud of because I think on reflection, it's really something that I think it could have gone a very different direction and meant something very different. There was a young girl, let's just call her Bianca, and she was your stereotypical, very rural white South African girl. Absolutely adorable and lovely, but I think very rural white South Africa is sort of your American equivalent of, I guess, working class Southern. Very traditional, very family-centered, everybody knows everyone, very patriarchal, that sort of thing. I remember she came to our school and she hardly spoke at all. She just didn't speak. It was incredibly religious, very devout. And being the popular person meant that I had this role as well as a grade representative or something like that. Sort of like your equivalent of a head girl, that if there were new people, I had to help them. And so it was sort of my duty to help her and to help other new students. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think that was what really cemented my role as somebody who advised people or spoke to them when there was a problem, if there was fighting in a group. Rather than everybody bickering behind each other's backs within the group, they'd come to me and bicker to me. And I liked this role. It was very lonely, but I sort of saw it as a role that had to be played, and it was a role that I excelled in. And I remember Bianca came to me in tears, and she was absolutely mortified, and she was just in an absolute state. She just burst out, I have sinned so badly, and I have been sinning for so long, and I am going to hell. I don't know what to do. And I mean, I was mortified because I knew how important God was to her and, you know, to me as well. And, you know, it was just a very petrifying thing. I thought she'd sort of murdered someone. It was quite extreme. We just went on a walk together and she was still sobbing. Eventually, what I got from all of this sobbing and this crying was the following. She had been masturbating, as she called it. The thing with being popular is that people assume that you know things, and you have to sort of go along with that.
Now, I didn't know what masturbation was.
I didn't know what she was talking about at all. I thought that this was something to do with an actual sin, like one of the 10 commandments. I had absolutely no idea what she was going on about, but I could see how absolutely mortified she was by this, and that, in her own words, she couldn't stop, and that this was something that was causing her so much guilt and terror at the consequences of her actions. I think the reason I'm proud of myself for this is because now that I know what masturbation is, I'm very glad that I didn't completely destroy this girl's world. My advice to her was as follows.
Does this make you happy?
And she said, yes, it does. And I said, and so
afterwards, has anything happened? Has anything bad happened? Has anybody been hurt? Has it resulted in you feeling less able to communicate with God?
And she said, no, I still pray, I still read my Bible, I still feel God's love. And I said, well, you've told me that it makes you happy, and you've told me nothing has happened as a consequence of you doing it. Therefore,
not only must you keep doing it, you must do more of it.
Much more of it. And we went away from that, and she was like, yes, I will be doing more of it. And I really hope she did. And I was happy that I gave that advice, even though I had no idea what I had just sent that poor young girl into. But I can imagine that wherever she went after that she was very happy. And then there was the fall from grace. When I moved to the UK, I was not prepared to not be popular, and I wasn't prepared for popularity to mean so many different things relative to what it meant in South Africa. And I think inevitably I couldn't have expected my experience to be exactly the same because, well, it was a completely different environment. My school in the UK was all white. I was the only black girl at my school, and everybody inevitably had established their friendship groups and knew each other from when they were young. It isn't necessarily the fault of the people at the school, if that makes sense. I think it was just circumstantial, and because a lot of them hadn't actually been to school ever with a black student, obviously it wasn't necessarily something that they knew how to navigate. And so I think it was down to circumstance more than anything. The different criteria of popularity was what really hit home for me, because suddenly popularity was not about achieving things, it was about how you looked. And it was very clear to me that the popular students were the ones who were the most attractive or the most handsome, and that they were all in relationships with each other or sleeping with each other, that sort of thing. And this was something which, my being a very kosher, respectable young Christian lass from South Africa, had not experienced or encountered ever. And so it was a completely different world. And the thing with my popularity as well, or my experience with popularity as well, was that contrary to popular belief, I was not actually at all academically inclined back in South Africa. I did not care about school. I did not care about grades. We hardly ever did so much as a test, really. It wasn't important to me. There was a clever class, and I did enough work and enough homework to get into the clever class just so that it would give more credibility to my popularity and be seen as an achievement. But my main area of expertise in the way of gaining respect was via sport and being in the top sporting teams and being good at sport. That was my gig. When I came to the UK, suddenly I went to a high school and a sixth form college where firstly, popularity was based on looks and sex appeal, and secondly, where there were absolutely no girls' sports teams. There were no girls' PE or sporting events, nothing. And so there was no way for me to excel in something that had previously really defined me excelling. And obviously nobody was looking for somebody to solve their problems or to give them advice or to be the equivalent of a head girl, because I mean, I was very far behind, both in terms of my academics. I was 2 years behind everyone, and I was also very much behind in life experience, and I was also very much behind in understanding of cultural difference and in understanding of being in a far more liberal society. And so coming to the UK and suddenly not being popular was an incredibly peculiar psychological experience for me. I very suddenly and unexpectedly lost purpose and meaning. I lost a sense of direction and also the sense of a role. And because of this, I suddenly became so scared and so self-conscious. I just could not navigate normal social interactions when they very infrequently came up. And I remember from about the second week that I started high school in the UK, I suddenly had like stomach problems, but stomach problems in which whenever I sat down in class, my stomach would just start making sounds and I couldn't control these sounds that it would make. And the more I thought about it and the more embarrassed I got by my stomach just making these phenomenal noises, the more it would happen. And I did research into this and was trying to find out what was wrong, tried to change what I ate, how I ate, tried to really, I did not know what to do, and it was just causing me so much anxiety. And it was all down to this new self-consciousness that I felt, this new fear, this new meaninglessness and lack of direction or a role to be in and to try and achieve in at school. It was just a very odd experience, I think, for me, going from being somebody who people would come to with their problems, sort of being there to solve problems that people may have, I mean, very trivial high school level problems, but nonetheless problems, to suddenly being somebody who ate lunch all by herself every single day at the same window outside the girls' bathroom. And it was just, I don't even know how to describe it exactly, but it really is something that stuck with me. And it was quite, at least for a teenager, quite soul crushing. And my days were just very methodical. I would walk to school alone. I would go to school. I remember I tried once to make friends with this girl who had been assigned to show me around the school on the first day by walking with her to school. And it was the most bizarre experience because it was the first time that I'd actually experienced somebody not wanting to be with me. And it was just the most uncomfortable experience for the both of us. I knew that she did not want to be seen walking with me into school and that this was causing her great embarrassment. But I'd sort of already initiated the walking in with her to school and I couldn't really back out. And it was just quite mortifying. And so from then on, I just sort of stopped trying. I would do most of my classes on my own in this sort of panopticon style office, which was this office that was sort of in the center of the hallway for some reason, with just glass windows all around. And I would do classes on my own with an online teacher because I was 2 years behind everyone. And so I was on my own for most of the time, but I was also in this room in which everybody walking past could see me. And inevitably, when their classes ended, they would move to different classrooms. And so I felt like a monkey in a cage, and it was literally like being a monkey in a cage. And because of that, I inevitably and inadvertently was studying every single second, and I didn't stop because I felt like I was being watched, or that there was the potential that I was being watched and judged. And so as a consequence, I became very studious and I started to study all the time. And also, if I was studying all the time, I felt that firstly, I wouldn't notice that I was alone all the time, and secondly, that other people wouldn't notice that I was alone because I'd be doing something. And so it was merely me choosing to study instead of choosing to, be a go-getter. I think most colleges have a sort of common study room with desks and computers where you go and you study during your free periods and after school, etc. And this was the place where I would go, and every day I would stay at my school. I'd be there by 8 in the morning and I'd stay until about 7 or 8 at night. And this wasn't just because of like the work that I was doing. This was purely because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I think also because I was exposed to new subjects I'd never even heard of, like philosophy and government and politics and sociology. And I never even knew that there was a difference between English language and English literature. And that just blew my mind to smithereens. Because I was in the study room all the time, this was also the place where everybody else would like congregate just to talk and to socialize. And so I knew everything that was going on in everybody's life. It was as if I was part of the furniture, and I hadn't experienced that before in sort of the high school setting of just being a nobody. I mean, I'd be sitting doing my work and people would just be doing whatever, making out, talking, shouting, running around, and it was like being invisible, absolutely invisible. And also, this isn't to say that the popular kids at my school in the UK were bad people. On the contrary, they were very nice people. They were just incredibly different to me, and inevitably I feel that we were just on such different wavelengths in life and in experience and in opinions or perspectives that it just seemed completely foreign to them, and I think to me inevitably as well. And it wasn't that they were mean to me in any direct way, but indirectly I did take it quite personally, even though I definitely don't think that that was in any way their intention. I think my confidence has definitely very, very recently started to improve as a consequence of you guys. Yes, you. YouTube has definitely been a lifeline in terms of a place in which I can actually talk and be recognized, at least parasocially, as a human being. And I can only thank you. You really don't know how much it means to me to just be able to talk to you like this about anything and everything, and to also have your support. It's just incredible, and it blows me away, blows my bloody socks off every single time. And so thank you is too little a phrase, but I thank you. I'd love to hear your experience of being popular or not, whether it's something that mattered to you or didn't matter to you, and what it means to you now, potentially, if as an adult you have friendship groups, or if you haven't, or how you found navigating the world of friendships beyond the very controlled environment of education. That's all I have for you today. I hope we got some things off our chest in this parasocial session. I definitely did, and it was, as always, an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so very much for watching, and thank you so much to Wren for sponsoring this video. Do leave a comment, do leave your thoughts, and I will see you very soon in the next one.